Greetings and welcome to the Women in Fire radio show. Today we're going to be discussing women health issues and injuries that women face in the fire service. Thank you to Fire Engineering for allowing women in fire to be a part of their radio show. I'm Lisa Baker, a retired battalion chief and the Southwest Region trustee. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about women health issues and injuries that women face. First off, we're recording this show on July 7th, so I'd like to first start off by saying our hearts and prayers go out to all the affected by the devastating floods that have occurred in Texas and all the lives that have been lost. So, integrating women into organizations and departments that for generations have been male dominated and sort of a home away from home for the men has not been easy, if we're being honest. In the past 20 years, we have seen many fire departments evolve into all risk departments. Departments no longer just respond to fires or medical emergencies. They now include hazardous material mitigation, water rescue, technical rescue, and a myriad of others. Women face some of the same health concerns and issues as men, but face their own unique issues as well. Due to the small sample size of female firefighters, research is a smaller size than the men's research. Between 2014 and 2024, there have been 183 articles focused on female firefighters, so it's improving, yet more work is still needed. Firefighter exposures are increasingly linked to adverse reproductive health outcomes for both male and female firefighters and their offsprings. Recent research found that women have a higher rate of breast cancer than the general population due to PFAS exposure. Cervical cancer and ovarian cancer also are higher in female firefighters. Female firefighters are also 1.8 times more likely to sustain injury in the workplace, with lower back and lower limb injuries being the highest. And important that all firefighters receive an NFPA 1582 annual medical exam, which includes cancer screenings to help with the cancer that many firefighters are now facing. So today I have a fantastic group of female firefighters that are joining us on the panel. I have Deputy Chief Heather Mosdeen from Fremont Fire, firefighter Kate Desner from Evans Fire District, which is in the Colorado, firefighter Isabel Moore, who is from Houston Fire, Brooke Sims, a firefighter from Aurora, Colorado, and Jennifer Nevrick, a firefighter paramedic chaplain, also from Aurora, Colorado. So the first question we have for the panel today is, women face a range of health concerns as a firefighter. As I just mentioned, breast cancer and ovarian cancer has a higher incidence with female firefighters than the general female population, and so does bladder cancer. What can be done to help reduce this, catch it early, and educate female firefighters? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll start. Um, you mentioned NFPA standards are to get physicals every year. Even though that is a standard, I don't think that happens at every single department, especially if it's not a career department. I don't think people are getting those physicals every year necessarily. And if we are getting physicals every year, they're not always adapted to women. I've had a physical before where they sent my blood work off, and then when they came back, they had all the blood work was marked that my hormone levels were off because they tested all my hormones as a male, not a female. So I think the company that my department uses now is actually really good about providing screenings that are adapted to women. So we get cancer screenings, we get ultrasounds now of our uterus is done and reproductive organs. And they do a good job of that. But I know that that's not happening every year or everywhere for everyone. And that's still very new, even in my department. I've only had that happen for the past couple years now. I've only been in the fire service for 7 years, but I know for a fact that not everybody's getting that. I think that we also need to have education programs focus on women. And campaigns focus on women. I know that we make up a small percentage of the fire service, but we are here and we're not going anywhere. So research needs to start being done on how this stuff is affecting us and how we can better prepare and protect ourselves. I also think women sharing their stories with other women helps too. I work with mostly men. I'm one of two female firefighters in my department. So I don't tell all the guys every single health journey that I go on, especially if it is something female related or reproductive related. But having those conversations with each other and networking with other women and sharing our experiences is very empowering, because the guys can tell me how, somebody's had testicular cancer all day, but I can't relate to that, and how much am I going to take away and actually learn from that. So I think that with a small number of us, we have to group together and share our experiences with each other, even if it's something like, hey, I got diagnosed with this cancer. I had this, and this symptom, and I didn't notice that that was something that was wrong. Because by having those conversations, we're going to be able to prevent a lot more things being missed, and a lot more, just not knowing of what symptoms to look for, how things happen, or possibly something we could be doing, even down to, they make some pretty good like charcoal shampoos out there and detox stuff. A lot of times we have longer hair. A lot of times we carry that stuff with us for longer after fires. So just little tips and tricks like that.
Yeah, Lisa, I think Kat hit it on the nail on the head there. Um, Making sure that we're taking care of ourselves and we're getting proper screening, but also making sure that our healthcare providers know the risks associated with our line of work. I know that personally, I had a breast cancer biopsy, and I remember the physician telling me, "But you don't have any risk factors." And I was like, "I've been a firefighter for 20 years. Of course, I have risk factors. Like that in and of itself is a risk factor." And because the studies are small and the data's not there, it takes departments like San Francisco Fire, who have a disproportionate amount of women with breast cancer, to sort of sound the alarm, and the rest of us to sort of hear that and to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. Education is super important, as Kat said, about making sure that we decon and we take care of ourselves, making sure we get those physical exams and we follow up. Education. I know that in my career, I've seen a lot of things change, but there's still a lot of work that we can do in terms of taking care of ourselves and sharing our stories. Like even just this group here, getting together and talking and sharing our stories so that other people can hear it, so that we all know. Because as Kat mentioned, the guys will sit around the table and talk about testicular cancer, but we can't bring up breast cancer or ovarian cancer in the same way. So it's important that we have a group of women to sort of to share stories with, and so that's why Women in Fire is really important for all of us. I think we've come a long way, but we still have a lot of work to do.
And Heather,
I'd like to add something. Within the past couple years, Houston's been a lot better about doing it's called a life scan. So we're doing blood work. One of the only cancers that they did go out of their way and test for was prostate cancer, which was a little odd. That was, more a male cancer, but that was the only one they went out of their way to make sure they tested for. And it could be because maybe the test was cheaper to do than a lot of the other ones, but it included blood work, a physical, cardiovascular analysis, and then also some different, I guess, sonograms or things just to look through everything. But that was a recent development for us. My first 5 years in the department, we had nothing. I think the only physical that really was required by our insurance to get a discount. It wasn't really a mandated department-wide thing. And so it's coming along, and we still have the money to do the life scan and things like that, but not everybody took advantage of that.
you just brought up a good point. And Chief Mosley, you might be able to piggyback on this a little bit. I know a lot of departments now are doing cancer screenings. I know one of the local where I used to work, the locals huge in trying to get cancer screenings done for members. Is that something you think that agencies should do yearly for departments? Any, Heather?
I
I
absolutely think
absolutely.
that they should. Yeah, I know for us, we use for Aurora Fire is our first year doing life scan, and um, but it's grant funded, right? It's not something that the city funded, and so once that those funds run out, um, then we don't know when the next time we'll be able to keep that. And yes, they have found um you know, a couple people that have had um, prostate cancer, breast cancer, they found, as well as some issues like with a lot of people thyroid as well. And so it's great that they have found that as well. But the biggest factor in all of this and to make these changes and to see that it's needed is the data, right? And so if we just do it for 1 year when it's funded and we don't continue to test and get those early signs, to get ahead of it, and we don't test people as they start their career, in the middle of the career, towards the end of the career. Like if we don't have those data points, then that is, and it is historically, right, like the data, the lack of data, um is what, keeps us, but data doesn't lie. And so we absolutely um need to keep the, not just the testing, but like the extensive and the thorough and the in-depth testing as something to get those data points.
Yeah, Brooke, my department, we did LifeScan as a grant for a couple of years. And then we were able to, so this was prior to me coming to Fremont, but I had a group of people that were really passionate about it. And we also saw things popping up for people. And we all know that early intervention, especially with cancers, early intervention is key. But a lot of other ailments too. The earlier you find out, the better off the outcomes are. So we saw that and we pushed for a couple of years with our city to get it as a budgeted item. And we were able to successfully do that this year. So if your administration can sort of continue to hear about the good things this is doing, it's returning people to work quicker. People are, identifying these problems and they're getting them taken care of, and they're coming back to work. And then they can compel the city to see that. They may be able to get it funded as something that's permanent for your department, which is huge. And Chief Baker, to answer your question, I absolutely think that it's in the best interest of cities or municipalities and departments to push for this for the members, if they want a healthy, safe workforce that can do the job.
And Chief Mosey, you mentioned earlier about San Francisco with the breast cancer. I just saw something on the news recently where the mayor was on there discussing how they had now have an initiative for San Francisco firefighters. I think he said if they were over 40 and 5 years on, they get a cancer screening every year because he realized the importance of taking care of the people that take care of the city. So San Francisco, I believe, is also
Yeah,
in the Bay
it's
Area.
huge. It's also important for all of us to realize that like we have to make the healthy choices ourselves too. You can't be, we can't be arguing for for PFAS free turnouts and then smoking cigarettes or cigars or vaping or like doing all the other things because your city or your chief or people are going to see that and they're going to say, why would I spend all this money to take care of you if you're not taking care of yourself? So that sort of, and that culturally has changed a lot in my experience in the fire service over the last 20 plus years. But I still think that we need to make sure that we're telling people like, yes, this is a dangerous job, but there are things you can do to protect yourself. And a lot of those things come with making sure that you're making smart decisions about what you're doing with your body also.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chief Mosey. Like education is the best prevention. I mean, how many departments have cancer initiatives like shower within the hour,
Mhm.
change your decon, clean cab initiatives and all that? And how many times do we still see guys and gals think that a dirty helmet's the is a great thing to walk around with a dirty helmet on your head like it's a badge of courage or honor or something, that people are still doing that. So I think you're right. I mean, it's sometimes we're our own worst enemies when it comes to certain things. So
I also think that having a really robust health and safety office that you can communicate with about and showing, your department the benefit to having healthy firefighters, the longevity that these people are going to give you. Like Brooke was saying, creating some of these, creating creating these tests or these exams that we can do on a regular basis so we can collect the data, so that we can see what are the things that we're facing in today's day and age. Because, in 2025, the things that we face today look different than they did for me 21 years ago. The things that are in our houses and in our environments have changed so dramatically. And it's not only something that the women are facing, it's all of us as a collective crew that are facing. And so just being better prepared as a fire department on how to equip ourselves to do these things, like taking the wipes and wiping yourself down after a fire, or coming back and taking a shower. I know that for us, it's not the helmet, the dirty helmets. For us, it's like a rush to get back in service because we want to serve our community. And how many calls are we going to turn, and really showing the importance of after a fire. Because at our station, we do wildland and we do structure firefighting. It's like, we really just need to take the time to go back to the station. And, if someone else is going to have to come into our area, we're going to take that hour to take showers and be prepared for for the people that we serve.
yeah, you made a good point. It is the rush to get back, that they don't want to miss the next fire. They don't want to miss the next call. And you're right. It's like, let's hurry up and get back.
Yeah,
Um,
Jenny, you're so right. I mean, I know that was the culture in Oakland, not just getting back in service to take the next run, because everybody around, everybody is impacted, right? The whole district is impacted.
mhm.
But also getting back and then making sure that you want to get your gear back in service. So prioritizing putting the saws back in service, or instead of prioritizing taking a shower, which they're all important, right? Um, and so I think we're changing that in a little ways by using the wipes and stuff, but really the shower is ultimately changing your turnouts. I know there's some departments that don't have a second set of turnouts, so
Yeah.
that's another issue.
That would
Well,
be
and the
Houston.
other exposed thing for us is like our thyroid. Like we came back with our life scans and everyone's got some sort of thyroid issue. And, just that goes to show you, like, maybe our hoods aren't as protective as they need to be, or maybe we aren't as diligent to wipe off the areas of our body that are most exposed.
One thing Houston did long before I was there, and they were phasing it out while I had just got there, was something called a reed hood, which fantastic coverage and blocked a lot of heat, but it was essentially an extra piece of turnout on your head. It wasn't a sock hood or anything like that. And I guess we are known for uber aggressive firefighting tactics, and that has gotten people in trouble with those hoods. They're going out of their way to go farther and deeper into the fire. But that was another thing. It would just sit right on your neck and it would hold all of those carcinogens and toxins. And we only had one set of gear. We still only have one set of gear. So, now that we've phased into the sock hood, we do have two sock hoods, so that gets rid of a lot of issues around our neck and things like that. But there's still just so much junk on that people don't realize.
Yeah, the other thing that we haven't even touched on is, you guys in Aurora know this, but wildland, like we're still not using any sort of PPE for wildland firefighting. At least in California, it's not mandated. Most people, it's still just a bandana over your face or something. And so many of the products of combustion in the wildland are just as dangerous, if not more so than than in a structure fire. A structure fire is just outside. So we have that also. And we know that the decon when you're out on a wildland incident is way, way more difficult than in a structure when you're returning to the station.
And we talked about decon and the second set of turnouts and stuff. And I think a lot of times what's overlooked is the washing of the hood and the helmet liner in your helmet,
Mhm.
which is getting just as dirty as everything else and is sitting right on your head. So I
Well, I
think,
think a lot of this comes down to education too. It's
yes.
it's educating our people, looking at the studies, comparing the data, bringing that to your HSO or your wellness office, and helping be an advocate, for your members.
Do you guys all have a second set of turnouts? Is that pretty common for? Oh, wow. All right.
Yes.
We do. How long ago was that though that we had Jenny? How long ago did we get a second set? Because we haven't always.
Oh, okay. So that's a new development for you guys.
In the last
I'd say in the last 10
mm,
years.
Oh, okay.
yeah, in the last
Kind of,
10.
it's been about 10 years.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Since we had our second
we
set.
Fremont, and I was previously in Oakland. And Chief Baker, you probably remember it was probably about 10 or 15 years ago that we worked on getting a second set for everybody.
It was about probably 12 years ago that we worked on getting the second set of turnouts for everybody, but then there was a lot of pushback when we tried to go to the wipes and the everything else. So that was kind of interesting when that was occurring. But yeah, I think the union and the administration were pretty good on working on getting everybody a second set of turnouts. And it was in the MOU to buy additional extractors to get the equipment cleaned and such. So
Oh, okay.
I think having a good labor relationship between the admin and the union really helps with stuff like this.
100%.
So
I think also going back to like our awareness of scans and like the life scan and stuff like that. I noticed that a lot of like Isabel was talking about, a lot of the men, their testosterone is being tested, but on the female level, they don't test our testosterone, they don't test our estrogen, our progesterone, which, all these endocrine disruptors, all this smoke and product that we are wearing and that are doing damage to our bodies, it is most definitely disrupting our hormones and the way that we perform. And I would like to see more of that awareness and also testing be done in the female population of firefighting.
and I think you've all made a good point about we need to share our stories and such because when they do surveys, since the women firefighter population is so much smaller than the male population, a lot of women don't respond to the surveys. So the data is kind of not as robust as they'd like it to be because not as many women are willing to want to share their stories or even respond to the surveys when they do have the surveys.
When that the huge part is when, if and when they have the
Win the
surveys.
survey.
I had one a few years ago. What year are we? 2025, like 2023, I think they had a survey about it. And
How is that being distributed to the different
Yeah,
firefighters?
who is they?
I'm not sure. I'm not even gonna lie when I Googled.
Oh, okay.
When
I
I
didn't know
Googled,
if it
yeah, I
was
don't
like
know. When I Googled
IAFF or
information,
someone. Like
no.
who are they surveying and how? Because I'm like, I was on in 23 and I didn't
Yeah, I
hear
just
anything
Googled.
about it.
I Googled women's health issues, and there was some survey that I was looking through, and it said it was from 20 to 2023. I don't recall who did it, to be honest with you. Um, so reproductive health is another concern among female firefighters. We've discussed in previous podcasts and talked about pregnancy and how many departments still don't have a pregnancy policy and such. But what challenges do female firefighters face with regards to reproductive health? I don't want to go into like departments don't have pregnancy policies and stuff, but just the fact that reproductive health, so to speak.
I think Jenny just brought up a good point. She talked about testosterone levels being tested and estrogen, just hormone levels in women and not being tested in general in the fire service. I think we don't know enough about how to test hormone levels in women in general in the world. I think we need to put way more money into research for that. I mean, how many different kinds of ED pills are out there, but you have a hormonal imbalance, and what do they say? Hey, take birth control and good luck, even with the negative side effects of birth control. So I think just in general, there needs to be more funding for research, not just in the fire service, but in women and alternative ways and education on how to manage hormone levels. Because you work as a female, you work, say you're 30 years, how many different hormone changes are you going to go through in that, you know? Like, I mean, I'm in my early 30s. I can't imagine what it's like going through menopause and being in the fire service and not having anyone to talk to about that, or not having any resources to manage it at all. So I just think we need to
I'm
figure
there
that.
right now. I'm right there right now. I've been in the fire service for 21 years. I've been through 3 career academies. I'm still in the back seat and I'm going through perimenopause. And let me tell you, I'm looking at my tracker and I'm like, oh, it's that week, you know? And I know the struggles that I'm going to have, you know, with myself. And, you know, I mean, it's a silent thing that we suffer because it's like you're not going to show that on the outside. But, you know, it is something that you have to navigate because, you know, when you go through a cycle of, you know, your childbearing ages, then you're in your perimenopausal, you know, in your 40s to 50s. I'm 50, I'm going to be 51 this year, you know, navigating that place, because I know that I'm going to be at more risk for injury because of my hormone changes. I'm going to be at more, you know, I'm going to be more tired. You know, I'm going to lose muscle mass. So I have to be active in that, in keeping that up, you know, whether it's through my exercise or increasing protein intake to make sure that I'm not losing muscles. I tell a lot of women, I used to teach CPAT, and I tell them, I'm like, you know, when you're in the gym, you want it to be hard, but when you're on that fire ground, you want to cheat every step of the way. You know, and it's just navigating that season, you know.
Well, I think you said something like a couple of things too, Jenny, is that one is that it's a silent, right, like suffering, which we have for, you know, we talk about how for mental health we don't suffer in silence, you know what I mean, and kind of look for the cues and the different things. However, I think a big piece of kind of what we're talking about today as well is like, we don't need to do this and suffer in silence. Like, we need to advocate for ourselves and for the other women in the department, just as much as we advocate for other issues that we all face as well. Like Kate said, like, or Kat said, like, we're not going anywhere. Women aren't going anywhere in the fire service. And so like we have to um advocate and you know me, do so loud enough because our numbers are fewer, um to get these issues like more at the forefront for it as well. And so it's definitely something where you know, women have the reputation of not supporting each other. We definitely, with these concerns, because we are all going to experience them, and it will be more similar than there are differences, you know. So, uh, to not let it be something that we silently suffer through.
And I think that there's a fear of that. Like, I know that I have changed many different ways being a female in the fire service from my 20s now to my 50s. And, you know, I used to just want to be one of the boys. Like, I didn't want, you know, I wanted to hide my boobs. I didn't want to be a female, but we have to recognize we are not men. We are not built like men, and we are not meant to be like men. We are women in the fire service, and we need to honor that, you know, that God made us different this way. And it's, you know, it's a blessing, but it's okay to be a female in the fire service, you know, and advocate for our groups and teach the women that are coming up in the fire service that it's okay for them too. They don't have to do things like the boys.
I love hearing you say that. I love hearing everybody say that. You know, you don't have to be a boy. You can still be a woman, have all your issues that you have, and share that camaraderie with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so cool that there's so many different types of women. You know, there's women that don't wear makeup, there's women that do wear makeup. There's, you know, I mean, we're just unique the way that we come. And, you know, we have a benefit to the fire service, you know, and it's like, instead of talking about the things that are not a benefit, how about we start talking about the things we can do and the ways that we can show up, you know, for our partners.
Absolutely.
Brooke, that survey I was talking about was from 2018 to 2021 and was published by the National Library of Medicine. So I have no clue it doesn't say who they surveyed or who they did anything. So
We'll have to look at the next one. You know,
10 years down the road.
yeah, right. You know, like I hope they're surveying now. If we can put them and pub them, say we want to talk to more women in the fire service. They know where we are. We're there 365. Come talk to us.
So, the next question is, we know that PTSD and anxiety occur in the fire service. How can we help control these, as it's been shown that women firefighters with PTSD have significant lower levels of anti-mullin, I know I pronounced that wrong, hormones, a key marker of ovarian reserve, while women with anxiety also showed reduced levels. So it's been a survey, once again proved, I don't know who they surveyed. They just say they survey people, that anxiety and PTSD and depression could possibly have an effect on reproductive health. And I think we can all probably admit that being a female firefighter, you are going to have PTSD just from sometimes the situations you're put in your fire stations or in your career, and sometimes the lack of support you may not receive from your other firefighters, your administration and such. So, um, how could, and Brooke, I think you mentioned it, that sometimes women are, and I'm paraphrasing, sometimes women are our own worst enemies, that we don't really support other women, that we are our own worst enemies, where we're just going to badmouth other women and everything else.
Yeah, I think that typically is and can be a stigma. Um, and you know, just wanting to see less of that happening, right? Like I think that's a really big part because we can't you know, we cannot do it. We're so few as it is, right? That we can't afford to be divided. And you know, for me, I had my oldest, I was not a firefighter yet, but my youngest, who just turned 4, I've been on 6 years now, and so I have experienced a pregnancy um, before becoming a firefighter and a pregnancy while being a firefighter. And you know, I breastfed both of the girls, but you know, trying to keep up my milk supply and you know, for me, I completely went against what the norm and like the stigma was. I remember there were a couple of women who they got pregnant and we had kids right about the same time. And while they didn't want to kind of disrupt things and go right back to the firehouse, I don't know, I'm not sure. I don't think that they like kind of breastfed or um you know, for me, it was a fight to like I wanted a fridge so that I didn't have to put my breast milk in either of the shift's fridge or the central fund fridge. Y'all know how that is. I was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. And then also, you know, fighting uh to be able to pump for 20 minutes every couple of hours. And so, you know, I went to a slower station to do that so that I wasn't really taking a busy resource out of the city, and not roving and, you know, going to different stations. And so, but then, you know, I was looked at from the male counterparts that, oh, she's at a slower station and, you know what I mean? And so like, um, it's like, you know, I could have, you know, like roved into a busy house and then taken somebody's seat because I wasn't going to rove and have to pack up all of my things. And so it was like all of these things. And we kind of just like let people say what they want to say. And you know how your reputation gets once, you know, the wildfires of rumors start. Um, but kind of like speaking up and like advocating and like doing what's best for you as a female, as a mother, as a female firefighter, especially when it comes to like issues with pregnancy and breastfeeding, but also we need that same kind of advocacy towards uh the stigma of like the anxiety and the PTS, like you said, about the things that we do experience, just sort of constantly having to prove ourselves every time we go into a station, and like kind of speaking up and advocating and not really being up for those kind of games because we are at a higher risk of having these lower levels of hormones and how they affect them. And so I said all that to say that it was very hard to keep up a milk supply and keep my stress and anxiety down, um, breastfeeding in the firehouse. And it sounds like we have all been on during the pandemic, because I remember my anxiety being extremely high uh during that as well. And so it was kind of around that time that I was also pregnant, because I had my youngest in 21. So lots of things, and I think that we just need to stick together as women to combat knowing that we do have those lower levels of hormones.
The other thing I would add is normalizing things, normalizing and educating even our counterpart, females and, male counterparts. I've, being in the fire service before this, I was married to an officer with Jefferson County Sheriff's Deputy who went to Columbine. And, after that, there was no peer support. There was no chaplaincy. It was like stuff your feelings down and get back to work. And, a lot of these people wound up having drinking problems and everything else. But normalizing that, when you go through significant events such as Columbine or the theater shooting for us in Aurora or the pandemic, we're going to have things in our career that are going to just stress us to the max. And I would say not only just PTSD, but moral injury is kind of like what is on the horizon of what we're looking at, the moral injury behind these things, which is a little deeper dig. But normalizing and educating, like for us, I'm putting together a chaplaincy for our whole fire department. It started with just me, and now I have 8 other chaplains. And, I'm trying to also get not only chaplaincy for our firefighters and for our retirees and for our, other civil workers, also for their families as well, because, the first people that recognize this PTSD is going to be the families. They're the ones that are going to be, looking at the irritability, they're going to be the ones that are going to see the red flags way before it's seen at work. And if we can get into the families and educate these things, then we can start to kind of dive into self-care from that level as well. So.
Yeah, I'll chime in and say, Brooke, you're totally right. Having been there with pregnancy and having children and breastfeeding, sometimes it takes somebody else that can be your voice to advocate for you to those other members who can like sort of, so you don't have to say it, because you are hormonal and you are emotional, and you shouldn't have to stick up for yourself in that way. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a woman, but it can be, one of our male counterparts who recognizes just the stress. But the only way that we get there is by talking about that. And that's hard. It's hard to get there. Right. And like I said before, I think we are getting there. And Jenny, you're totally right about the moral injury. I just attended a presentation about moral injury, and it was the first time that I had sort of understood this and how it affects us as firefighters. And I think just in general, we need to dig a lot more into this and do a lot more education in our entry level academies, in our officer academies, and sort of make people aware of how their decisions may affect others in terms of moral injury, and how you can advocate for yourself if you're in a position where you're feeling that moral injury, because those things added up, cumulatively add to the stress and all those things. And it's not just women, it's men too. I just think that sometimes women are more likely to just pull the plug and leave the fire service as a result of it, where men feel like they have to stick it out, and it manifests with the substance abuse and those kind of issues.
Well, I think it also just normalizing it helps people feel human, like Brooke was saying, hey, I'm a mom and I'm breastfeeding and this is what I need. And this is just a part of life, like, hey, we're going to go on some calls that are going to be hard, and, just normalizing these things that, that these things are hard and it's okay to not be okay, and that we can get you the help that you need in this season of your firefighting career.
Brooke, you talked about getting rid of the stigma. I think another thing that we need to work on, besides obviously pushing mental health, is fighting back against people being punished for reaching out for help. Whether that's you have a mental health program and you use a resource, or finally stand up and say, hey, I'm having a hard time, I could use a little help right now. There's too many stories I hear of people being taught in their departments to do that and being encouraged to do that, and then they lose their jobs, or then they're judged, or then they're considered weak. And it's not just mental health, but the same thing, with pregnancy. Even with the departments that have paternity and maternity policies and say they accept it, I've heard it. I've heard oh, well, the guys say, well, I've already had kids, or, well, I don't get a pregnancy leave. Like, I don't get as long as a leave. Why do they get that much of a leave? And sometimes there's retaliation from that, and it makes you a target. And I'm sure everybody's department has an anti-retaliation policy, but they don't work. It doesn't matter. Sure, there's some things that are obvious that you could have written down, but 9 out of 10 times, people will find ways to gaslight you, or to treat you differently, or, to whatever it is that they do. There's other ways that people can do things that you can't necessarily report. So I think we need to start fighting back a little bit more on that. And if we're going to say, hey, it's okay for us to do these things, hey, it's okay for us to reach out, then we're actually letting people reach out and use those resources without being punished.
Yeah, I think that is key. When I was pregnant in the fire service, I chose a different path. I chose to be offline. And I know that for me, I am a woman that gains 100 pounds when I have a baby. I've had 3 of them. It's just the way I make babies. And, a lot of men were like, ooh, is she going to be able to come back after that? And it's like also coming back to work and, finding that encouragement, people to support you, saying, hey, we got you. It took your body a long time to make that baby. It's going to take that body another year to kind of get back to some sort of level of normalcy.
Chief Mosey, you brought up something. I'm going to go off topic a tiny little bit here about mental health and what moral injury and recruit academy classes and stuff. So we're talking about health issues and such. And I mean, people spend, I don't know, what, 16, 18 weeks generally in California at a fire recruit school, academy, whatever you want to call it. Do we need to take away, like, or not take away, but add some topics that probably aren't being taught right now in the curriculums? I mean, we teach them building construction, we teach them, hose lays, ladder, how to throw a ladder, vehicle extrication, and all that. But the softer skills like mental illness, how you just brought up anti-retaliation and such. I mean, there's a lot of things, policies and stuff, and they're just pretty much, in my opinion, there's a lot of words on pieces of paper that are never followed, and some major issues that we still face in the fire service into 2025. So I don't know if we need to add things to the training division, recruit school, training division, whatever you want to call it, to make sure that when we're putting and it seems like the recruits now are younger and younger. When we put them out on the streets, I mean, they could throw a ladder, they could, pull hose
I
line
think
and
we
everything
do.
else.
Yeah, I think we do. And it's difficult, right? Because there's a lot of stuff, and we're as a fire service, we're asked to do more and more over time. I mean, we're doing a lot more stuff. So we have to make sure that people know the skills to keep themselves and their crew safe on the fire ground. So all of that is super important. But you're right. Like, we also have to teach these other things that are going to keep you safe in and out of the fire station. And that is those things. I think we do a really poor job of telling new firefighters what is acceptable and what isn't, except for like the obvious, like against the law thing, right? We cover maybe in one class, right? You cover what's legal and what's not. But I think we do a pretty bad job of educating people on what's acceptable as a probationary firefighter. Yeah, there are rites of passage, but this crosses the line. And I think we do a poor job of our new officers of making them make the transition from being firefighters into company officers, and allowing that what they shouldn't have permitted as a firefighter, but maybe they did, but understanding that's no longer acceptable once you become a company officer. And as we do that, it's going to be unpopular for some people, but you have to do that in order to create this environment where we're treating ourselves better, and we have less of this moral injury and less of this PTSD, and we can share the experiences that we all have as people, with the attempt of all of us being better off for it. And I think that's the whole thing about speaking up for yourself or for someone else and advocating for what's right, just as humans, as good humans. So yeah, the long answer to your question is yes, we do need to add it. How do we fit it in an academy that's already jam packed? I don't know, except for maybe prioritizing differently and accepting that some of the stuff it's okay to learn on probation and you don't necessarily need to know day one out of the tower, but really prioritizing the stuff that is paramount, in a different way.
Heather, you just made a good point. I mean, I don't know how many reputations made the minute you walk in the training division. And so you have firefighters that are now officers that were doing what they're now telling their firefighters not to do. If that makes any what I did. And so
That
It's
was
true, and
what
it
I
does happen.
was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead, bro.
That's
Sorry.
what I was saying. Like, I think that Chief brought up some great points as well. But then you get to the point where, like you're learning so many new skills. Like, as I came in green, and so trying to figure out where that fits. But for me, as someone who, like, I care deeply about people, like I'm a people's person, but you kind of get jaded and get a little discouraged when you have your leaders, right, that are doing that behavior, what they tell you to do, they don't exemplify, right? And so I think that can be something that is hard for the culture, right? If it's, well, I was treated like this, right? And so I don't want to speak up for that fear of retaliation. And also seeing that, you know, not only is it retaliation, but people can do things and not have that moral, like, behavior, and then but they don't have any consequences, right? There's no consequences for you know not doing something that you're telling someone to do, right? If that kind of makes sense. So, there's all of these stigmas, and like Kat said, that fear of retaliation. But if those individuals are retaliated against, the ones that retaliated against them are not being told, this isn't the way to go. This is not what you do. And you're a leader in the organization, right? And so it gets very, very muddy. And, I felt like a lot of that, for me, as part of my journey, some of that was going on, and kind of seeing that hurt different individuals within the organization, to where I, got discouraged and was considering like someone said before, that we kind of just will like leave the fire service. I did consider um leaving the fire service as well, just because not only I not feeling supported in the issues that I was going through, but also seeing, if people stood up for different individuals, them kind of getting retaliated and not being treated well. And so I think that as far as teaching these things and having the advocacy and the support is, in my eyes, a top down kind of viewpoint that has to come from the top down, and wherever it stops on that level, then that top person, whoever is above them, needs to come down and say, hey, like this is absolutely unacceptable, in order to kind of have that healing happen.
I also think that when people are in an academy, they're afraid. They're afraid that they're going to lose their job if they say anything. They're afraid that they can't stand up and do the right thing. And if they have leadership that is not exhibiting leadership type behavior or hasn't learned that lesson in the fire service yet, it's really hard for everyone. I've been through 3 career academies. I went through an academy, I won't say who it was with, but we had a firefighter fall 50 feet off a banger ladder. 50 feet, and broke both femurs, and it was negligence in how the drill was done. The ladder rode the rope system down. And, the leadership there was just interested in covering their tracks. I happened to be the only person that stood up in that academy and actually said, no, this was negligence. The rope system wasn't done right. It was windy that day. It shouldn't have been performed. And then I had the roughest riding academy that you could even imagine. And there was a lot of retribution. The last day, they put me through some drills. And this was something that I put myself in. I paid for this academy to go through this career academy for the experience, wanting to be a firefighter. And I see that we have done better in our academies as I've progressed in my career. I know that our academy has recognized at Aurora Fire that a lot of our recruits, because they come from a different background now than like the 80s or we got these different generations that think differently and operate differently. And, our style has to change a little bit to that. And they're just having a hard time coping. So our peer support team got together with chaplaincy, and now we're implementing kind of a mentorship program where we can come when they have their free days to work on their skills, to just be there and be able to let them talk about the things that their struggles, a safe zone, a place where we can follow them and give them support and about some of these mental challenges that they could be going through. And even in the back seat as a senior firefighter, if my firefighter's never seen a dead body, I'm going to be like, I'll ask them, have you seen a dead body? Okay, this is what it looks like. This is what you got to prepare them.
You do. It's you just made a good point about fire academies. I mean, I know when I went through mine, it was to instill fear in you that you weren't going to pass, you weren't going to do this. They screamed at you and did this, and we're paramilitary and all this. And I think anybody was afraid to say anything at that point when they're screaming at you on the orientation day. So it's funny that we say a fire service is family. And I mean, I get that anytime we get together and you get a large group of people from different cultures and stuff together, there's going to be issues. But we always say firefighters are full of courage, but then when you stand up for courage, then you're made an outcast, which is kind of the opposite of what courage stands for. But um, Isabel, did you have your hand up a minute ago?
No,
Okay.
I don't know if it just pops up randomly. I didn't touch anything.
Okay. So in recent years, PPE manufacturers have started to make women PPE gear. As the percentage of female firefighters become more, the manufacturers have taken a proactive stance. Previously, improper fit of PPE led to increased risks of on-site injury, a reduction in mobility, and poor wear comfort due to the areas of improper fit. At the recently held Women in Fire International Conference, they actually had a PPE manufacturer there that was actually sizing women for PPE gear. My understanding is it's because it's almost custom made that it's a lot more expensive than just your regular standard off the rack PPE gear. But improper PPE gear, I mean, I don't think it's only an issue with women firefighters because men come in all different sizes, shapes, and such. But so everybody, I think, but Isabel said you have two sets of turnout gears. So, or two sets of turnouts. So when it's replaced, if you don't already have the female gear, are you being offered the female gear, or are they just giving you?
Yeah, I was actually able to go get fitted earlier this year, and got female gear. They don't keep a lot in stock, obviously. There's not a lot of us in Houston Fire. But yeah, if it gets dirty, we only have one set of gear. I have one set of female gear, and if it gets dirty, we try and, hose it down as much as possible and hope that it's not super wet by the time you make another call. So that is a challenge, but it's been really nice to see the difference in the female gear. The crotch is a lot smaller, so I'm able to step up on tailboards and things like that without having to hike my pants up, which has always been an issue. I'm not super tall, so that was difficult. We have the coats that have a lot more room in the chest area and are a little bit more fitted in the waist area, so it does kind of fit a female form a little bit better than the traditional men's gear. But I've been actually really happy with the women's gear that we've been supplied. I think Lions does that. But I know there's not a lot of that out there for women. And I think getting that out there for women so that they have that option, especially smaller departments. I know it's budgetary and stuff like that on why people don't get it, but it really does make a difference on the fire ground when you're doing these tasks that everybody else is doing, to have the proper equipment that actually makes it easier to do your job.
Uh, Um, Anyone else have anything to add about improper fitting PPE? I mean, especially gloves. I mean, we all know that we have longer fingers and smaller palms than males.
I think the NFPA did come out and is starting to advocate for gender specific gear. I did see something on that. But yeah, like in the old days, the rubber boots.
Oh, they're terrible.
Everybody remembers the rubber boots. I mean, you get blisters, and the other thing I found, so I've had a back injury in the fire service related to a call I was on. And I herniated L3, L4, L5, S1. I went through back surgery in 2011. And I found that after my injury and after recovery, gear was a struggle. Like, I actually specifically at night will get back into my regular pants if I'm going on an EMS call, because I don't want to wear the firefighter gear because it hangs on my hips and it adds pressure to my back. And then when you couple that with putting on the whole turnout, and then you've got a helmet that's got a rim that doesn't fit you, you can't even look up. So we had actually back specific helmets for us people that had back problems in the fire service. And then we had a new chief come in a while ago and took them away because he didn't like the way they looked. But the nice thing about it was they were lighter, they were shorter. I could actually look up without messing with my neck, because if you have a problem with your lower S curve, you're eventually going to have a problem with your upper S curve. So it's like just making sure that we have right fitting equipment, from our helmets to our gear to our boots, that's specific for us.
Let's say we're talking about those helmets. I remember being in fire academy and cutting my hair. I cut my hair because I was like, my hair doesn't fit right in those helmets. And so then you think about getting, the proper fit and the proper seal, and then also, making sure that your hair.
I think we lost her.
Brooke, you're on mute. I think you're on mute, Brooke.
Brooke, you're on mute.
Yeah, I realized that. I didn't want you to hear little voices in the back there. That's what that was. But yeah, just like I didn't want to necessarily cut my hair, but there was one other firefighter that looked like me in my department at that time, and she was a probationary firefighter at that time as well. And so I ended up cutting my hair then, and it wasn't until she's now the captain now was like, hey, there actually is another option. Like, try this helmet out for it. And so, like, there are in companies that are, they're doing um better at it as well, but it's like, yeah, they're not just this is a better fit for you. We're going to go out of who we carry or, whatever it is that, all right, it phases out in 7 to 10 years. Then if we have, kind of that option as well. But I do want to point out that, it was my first year last year going to Women in Fire and was able to meet with fire decks and their representative and their president, and we got to talking about headwear as well for like we said, we all know the struggle of the rim and fitting up for specific body types as well, but also you have more people of color in the fire service as well, and so talking about that fit for different hair. We had a young lady who I met and absolutely adore now and keep in contact with who wears a hijab, right? So like they're looking at uh her hood looking different in her hair headwear as she does her job and what that looks like to support her. So there are companies out there that are making an effort, and I think it's just up to the departments and seeing about like funding and also like fitting the needs of individuals as a part of just looking at a blanket kind of solution, because we know that doesn't work for everyone.
Okay. So we're about out of time right now. So you guys had some really excellent information, and I want to thank each guest for being a part of the radio show. Thanks to Firefighter Engineering again. Thanks to all the listeners and members of Women in Fire. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and check out our website, womeninfire.org. And mark on your calendars for our next Women in Fire International Conference, which will be held next September.